I want to show you two books that tell the story of my entire relationship with programming. The first one is The Art of R Programming. I've actually got it here. So you can see it's quite heavily annotated. I've got quite a few bookmarks, and maybe inside you can see I've got highlights at various places as well. But actually, this book represents a time when I almost gave up coding for good. My journey started in a statistics course when I was doing my PhD at Cambridge University, and they threw us into the deep end with something called Base R. To a beginner from a humanities background, it felt completely alien. The syntax was abstract, the rules felt arbitrary, and reading the code is just like deciphering an abstract language with lots of symbols like square brackets, dollar signs that can get very confusing very easily. Now you can see from all the bookmarks on the book that I just showed you, I was trying. I was really trying, but it felt like I was just memorizing spells from a magic book without understanding the magic. I completed the course and was able to run statistical models in Base R, but I walked away thinking, okay, maybe I'm just not a tech person. This isn't for me. But then I stumbled upon this other book and this thing called Tidyverse through the book R for Data Science. I don't actually have a physical copy as this is an open book that is freely available online. Now, the book's philosophy was completely different. It treated coding not as a set of rigid commands, but as a language with a grammar. Suddenly, the code reads like simple, logical sentences. I could tell the computer to take my data, then filter for what I wanted, and then create a summary. It was a sequence, a narrative, the natural language of human beings. And I'm sure even if you haven't learned any coding before, reading the commands or the functions that I listed on the screen, you can already guess what they do, right? Filter, summarize, and things like that. And that aha moment was everything for me. It told me actually the problem wasn't me or the books. Now, don't get me wrong, both are great books, but the problem was the way I was learning. So learning Tidyverse actually completely changed my relationship with coding. Because it was so easy to understand, I started using it on a daily basis. Now, that base R versus Tidyverse R contrast or comparison may be something that is only known to people within the R community. But if you've ever looked into coding or programming, then you may have heard of another comparison that is much more commonly seen. And I actually get asked a lot by my students about this. The question or the comparison is R or Python. And people love to debate this, almost like a sports rivalry. So as you can see from my previous setup, then you know my answer is actually starting with R. But why am I so passionate about starting with R and specifically Tidyverse R as opposed to Python? It actually comes down to one thing, motivation. So when you're starting, the most dangerous thing isn't choosing the wrong language, is quitting. Tidyverse R is purpose-built to give you satisfying results very fast. It's designed for data analysis. You can load a file and create a beautiful professional-looking chart in just a few lines of incredibly readable code. And some people have put it, Tidyverse has this minimalist elegance. Now, Python is also an amazing, powerful, and general purpose language, but it isn't as user-friendly as R. Even installing Python and set up virtual environments can become a stumbling block for many non-tech people. And yes, if you're wondering what is virtual environment, then you're proving my point. It actually has a steeper learning curve than R, which you can just install and run just like installing a regular app. The process is really not that different from installing a WhatsApp or WeChat onto your laptop. Now, another big plus of R is the beginner-friendly ecosystem. Because Python is used by many professional coders, many of the resources or packages you can find are more on the technical side, and they often assume a certain level of technical knowledge. R, on the other hand, is used by many who are not professional coders, such as researchers and statisticians. And as a result, a lot of the educational resources and helper packages exist to help people do things more easily. And here I'm just showing you a really simple example, which is using Quartal. And this is actually a publishing system that uses R to build websites with a few lines of code. And this kind of helpful functions or packages or resources greatly help ease your way into coding and programming. So the goal isn't to pick the language with the most job postings. The goal is to pick the language that makes you feel smart and capable on day one. The initial sense of I can do this is the feel that will carry you through the tough parts later on. So you're not just looking for the best language, you're looking for the best starting point so you don't give up. And the early success I had with Tidyverse R was exactly the feel I needed. It proved to me that I was capable. And once I felt comfortable, something clicked. I realized the core concepts like variables, functions, and loops, they were universal. So I started to branch out. I picked up Python, and with my experience with R, it actually felt just like learning a dialect as opposed to a completely new language. The grammar was different in some places, of course, but the core structure felt very similar. And then I also branched out into JavaScript for web building. And day by day, I just got more comfortable. And this allowed me to go from being a consumer, an observer, or even a skeptic to a creator and builder. So I started building things to solve my own problems for teaching, research, productivity, and for fun. Now, if you've taken my courses, then you know I built custom platforms for all of my courses. And not just for me, I also built tools for other teachers as well. So for instance, Teacher's Toolbox is a collection of tools to help teachers and manage and enhance classroom engagement. For example, this leaderboard is very easy to use. The teacher can just upload the name list and then they can use it to keep track of student engagement in class and have this quite fancy looking leaderboard as well. For research, I built this validity argument builder for my latest research paper published in a top tier journal in my field to make it easy for researchers to visualize validity arguments. For productivity, I combined my love for focus timers and Polaroid photos and created this iOS app that visualizes like a Polaroid photo. And it also has other functionalities as well, such as here, the session wall where you have a photo gallery, which is a quite motivating way to keep track of your focus sessions. I've also built a test of researcher personality just for fun. Actually, my students got me into this concept called MBTI, which turns out to be quite interesting. And I thought, okay, why not create one for researchers? If you're doing research, I would recommend you to take it as well. It just asks you 10 questions and will identify your researcher personality profile, just such as this one visualized here. So while this is not scientifically validated, I've been told by many people that it's actually quite accurate. Hopefully throughout these examples, now you can see that I actually took on this journey from being a consumer to becoming a builder and creator. And this feeling of agency is something that I think every humanist should experience. It's actually quite addictive. Okay, so at this point, you might be thinking, wow, that's really nice, but today, can I just ask AI to write all this code for me? Why do I have to learn to code? And you're not wrong. Of course, we can use AI to do a lot of the coding, and that's exactly what I did as well. But relying on AI without understanding the fundamentals is just like using a calculator without understanding what calculation is. You get an answer, but you don't know if it is right and why it is right, or how to ask the next question. So learning to code today is more important than ever, in my opinion, for at least three reasons. So first, it teaches you computational thinking. AI can write code, but it can't really structure your problem. So learning to code forces you to think more systematically and logically. You have to break down a vague problem or a vague question into a series of clear, logical, and concrete steps. Second, learning to code also makes you a better collaborator with AI. Because I understand the grammar, I can write better prompts, and crucially, I can debug AI's mistakes. Another reason why it is important to learn to code is that it provides a new kind of critical literacy, especially for humanities students. So today, algorithms are one of the most powerful and invisible systems shaping our culture. Learning to code demystifies them. You stop seeing technology as a magic black box and start to see the logic, the biases, and the limitations hidden beneath the surface. So ultimately, learning to code today isn't about becoming a programmer or coder. It's about learning the language of logic so you can ask better questions, build your own tools, and more deeply understand the world we live in. Thank you for thinking this through with me. I'll see you in my next video.